Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. It is the top of the hour. We have people still joining us, so we are going to give them a minute. We'll get started here in exactly 1 minute. Thank you. Okay, everyone. Hello again. Welcome to Supercharge AWS, how to enhance your AWS environment with enterprise class storage. Brought to you by Zadara. My name is Greg Newman, and this webinar will feature today me, there I am on the left, and Noam Shendar, our VP and GM of Cloud Business here at Zadara. I'm very pleased to have him join us as our expert. Welcome, Noam.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Good morning.
Let's get going. So I will tell you first, of course, what we're going to talk about, what we're doing, and let you know about a few things that you'd probably like to know about with regard to how to use this webinar and what we're going to be doing. We're going to talk a little bit, of course, about storage needs and how that market has evolved. I think we all know that it has evolved quite a bit. And then we'll talk in some specifics about AWS storage options. And then we're going to show you a little bit about how you can control your data and your costs at AWS a little bit better than perhaps with any other option you've had before. And we will leave some time at the end for Q&A. If you have questions, please put them into the questions screen in your GoToWebinar control panel. And at the end, we will select those questions and answer them right here live on this webinar. If we don't get to all of your questions, we will supply answers and send them out after the webinar. So please, if you have any questions, do include them. If we don't get to them while we're live, we'll be sure to get to them later. Okay, with that, let's get rolling. All of you on this webinar are likely to be Amazon Web Services users. That's probably what attracted you to join us here today. And you know, of course, that AWS has some terrific storage options for a variety of use cases. And we think that with AWS storage options, you have most, but not necessarily all, of your needs covered. Noam, you know this, of course, because you run our AWS business. Talk a little bit about what you see as some of the positives with AWS and maybe some of those holes that I alluded to.
Gladly. If you look at the landscape of cloud providers out there, AWS has the most complete set of storage services out there. They are ahead of the competition, and you can see on the slide that they cover a really broad gamut of use cases, from archival, that's Amazon Glacier, through object storage, and then through block storage, and from there to two types of file systems, EFS, or Elastic File System, which is NFS-centric, and FSX, which is CIFS-centric. So the former four is generally Linux-oriented, and the latter is generally Windows-oriented.
You can see everybody. Thanks, Noam. I just launched a poll. I realized, Noam, while you're talking, it'd be a good idea to gather a little bit of info. And so I just launched a poll asking our attendees about which AWS storage services they're using currently. Please take a moment to fill that out. We'd love to learn more about what you're using. That'll help us shape what we talk about in today's webinar. So while I'm gathering those results, Noam, let me ask you, this new service, Amazon FSX, it seems pretty interesting. I know this just launched late last year. What are you seeing with it that you think is the most interesting about this new service?
The most interesting piece is that it supports Windows use cases. This has been a gap in AWS's lineup historically. And it's good to see AWS filling that gap. Interestingly, it's a whole separate service. We're going to touch on this point in a little bit. But curious to see that EFS and FSX are different services managed separately. They have different limitations, different management paradigms. They're essentially unrelated services.
Right, right. And we're going to talk in a moment a little bit more about that relationship and that question. I'm going to close the poll now. I see that many of you have voted. If you would still like to put in your vote, please do so now. I'm going to shut this down here in a moment so that we can look at the results. All right. It looks like, thank you very much, everyone, for voting. It's so much fun to see. We have, this is the result. 27% for EBS, 13% for EFS, 40% for S3, no surprise. We've always seen that that's a very popular one. Glacier gets 20%. That's interesting, right, Noam? We know that that long-term storage and backup was popular. And of course, brand new FSX gets nobody just yet. I suspect that number will change over time. All right, so let's move to a little deeper discussion. What Noam alluded to a moment ago is that there's a separation. No, we put together this list. I know that when you and I spoke about what we're going to talk about in this webinar, we agreed readily, because of course we do extensive work with AWS. We agreed readily that AWS is great. There's so much to love about that service. They've done such a wonderful job, but there are limitations. And at the top of our list, of course, is the fact that it's not an integrated storage system. How does that impact people? And of course, some of the other things on the list too. Maybe you can help us understand what the impact is to somebody who's actually operating a storage system, some of these limitations.
Absolutely. And I was being very lawyerly before because I said that AWS has the most complete set of storage services out there, and that's true. But most complete doesn't mean complete. And this is where there are opportunities to go beyond and provide even more functionality to users of AWS to make their lives easier. So you referred, for example, to the split between FSX and EFS. What it means is that when one has a piece of data to be shared with virtual machines, one has to choose one protocol or the other. As long as one only needs one protocol, that may be okay. But we find among our customers that most environments are complex and have a mix of different kinds of virtual machines running different operating systems, and also different applications that are optimized for different protocols. And therefore, there's a need to use both types of protocols, the NFS type of protocol and the CIFS or SMB type of protocol. And even in some cases, there's the need to expose one volume using both of those protocols. So the fact that the two services are separate forces a hard choice between one or the other. It means that data has to sit in one service or the other and cannot be exposed using two protocols. It can only be exposed using one protocol. It also means managing two services, and those services have different APIs. They have different limitations, like volume size limits. FSX is limited to 64 terabytes, for example. They have different performance profiles, different optimizations. Essentially, it's having to learn two systems to perform what is a single function.
Well said. Yes, we've seen this, and I'm sure any experienced operator has probably seen the same thing. With that in mind, I launched another poll. We're not going to have polls on every slide, of course, everybody. I just want to make sure that we're gathering some information here up front so that we can tailor the presentation to your needs. And it occurred to me that it would be a good idea to gather here a little bit about some of your pain points with AWS storage. Please feel free to select multiples. I'd love to know what it is that concerns you about AWS. Again, great service, but there are limitations, as with anything. And learning a little bit more from you about what concerns you will help us shape how we talk about some of those issues in the coming slides. So thank you for taking a few seconds to provide your answers. I see they're coming in now. I'm going to leave it open for another 20 seconds so that we can gather that information. And Noam, while I do this, let's talk a little bit about that noisy neighbor problem. I guess I just love that term because it's so descriptive, but it's a real thing, right? It's not just a funny term.
It is a real thing, and it matters for two reasons. It matters because it affects one's performance, so it can create unpredictable and variable performance over time. And worse yet, it is something that is caused by the behavior of other users. In other words, it is not under the control of a given user. So the noisy neighbor problem can both create performance problems, and it's something that the person suffering from cannot control, affect, or mitigate. And therefore, it's a particularly vexing problem.
Yep, exactly. Good news, the results are in, and it looks like in this poll, we have a few standouts, don't we? Performance is not necessarily an issue for our attendees today, Noam, and security, not so much, although I think we're going to talk a little bit later about security because we know that's always an issue for everybody. Lack of features, however, jumps up. So does vendor lock-in, which we know we've heard a lot discussed in the media lately, and we can talk a little bit about that as well later. And then egress charges, no surprise, everybody has that on their minds. So thank you everyone for providing this information. Very helpful to us as we shape what we discuss in the coming slides. And with that in mind, let's go straight into the next portion of our presentation. We've spent a few minutes talking about AWS. We all agree that it's a terrific service, but it is missing some critical features, certainly for the more demanding enterprise users. And the way we like to talk about that here at Zadara is that people are seeking the control of the enterprise with the agility of the cloud. In other words, of course, you don't want trade-offs. Who does? What you want, we believe, is Zadara. And we're going to take a few minutes now to talk about what that means and why Zadara could be a very good option for you if you're looking to fill those holes we've just talked about. First, let's tell you a little bit about us. We are an advanced technology partner with AWS and have been since 2011. We've earned competency partner designations in multiple specialties. We work very closely with them, and we are, of course, happy to say we're a marketplace seller. We think that marketplace is terrific, and we love the convenience of it. We're going to talk a little bit later about our marketplace offering and how that works. Let's tell you a little bit about what it is that Zadara does and how it works. We like to say that we are enterprise storage at your service, and that's important. We are, in fact, a service. We provide enterprise data storage, enterprise-grade performance and security. We provide that anywhere you might need it, whether it's on premises or in the cloud. We have it in a fashion where it is evergreen or it is immortal. You can get it as you need it. You can scale up or down, and you pay only for what you use. And then, like I said, it's a fully managed service with a 100% uptime guarantee. And we're going to talk about what that means here in the coming slides. But that portion of our offering, the idea that we provide this as a fully managed service, is a new thing in the storage business, the enterprise storage business. And there's a reason it's a new thing. This is complex stuff. This is not as easy as offering up something like object storage in the cloud. Anybody who runs storage knows full well that running an advanced storage scheme and system is a significant chore. So let's take a look as we unpack that term and understand what it means to run a full-blown storage system and offer our service and the promises that we just made on that last slide. Let's take a look. Noam, this is a slide with a lot on it, right? But help us walk through this. Please talk to us about what this means and how the Zadara Enterprise Data Cloud, which is our term for the service we provide, help us understand why the world looks the way it does from Zadara's point of view, with our locations up here at the top, and then of course underneath them we see lots of different use cases or the ways in which people in fact employ storage in their environments.
I think the easiest way to comprehend the slide is to think about it in terms of three layers. There's the green layer, which is the storage array layer, and I'll come back to that. There's the blue layer, which is the additional capabilities that are offered on top of the storage layer, and then the top is the ability to deliver the service wherever it's needed, at AWS, at other cloud providers, on premises, and at other service provider clouds or even colocation facilities. So let me walk through that in that order. The green layer is the storage array layer, and this is a unique concept in the public cloud. Storage arrays are very common on premises, but in the cloud, this is a concept that we pioneered and continue to dominate. By storage array, we mean that you have actual physical storage devices, SSDs and hard drives, and any mix that you need, with the ability to change that mix on the fly non-disruptively. Because you have your own dedicated storage media, you're able to control your performance and cost point. You're able to control any trade-offs between performance and data durability and other storage parameters. And you have no noisy neighbor problems because your resources are yours and yours alone. So that's the storage array concept. On top of it, the blue layer has additional capabilities that are made possible by the as-a-service model and by the cloud architecture. So not only is it a great and market-leading storage array, but it also provides capabilities like built-in backup and built-in antivirus, built-in disaster recovery. It also provides integration with major software vendors like VMware and Microsoft. And it has even unique capabilities like file sync and share, and the ability to run containers inside the storage for extremely low latency for repetitive operations. And then, as if that weren't enough, this service is delivered anywhere that you would like it to be delivered. If you want to consume it at AWS, as is the topic of this webinar, you got it. It's available on demand right now at 15 different regions of AWS around the world. Do you need it in your own data center? No problem. We will deliver it to you there with your own dedicated private hardware that you consume as a service. You don't pay for it upfront. It's free upfront. We deliver it to you. It's local storage. It's not cached. It's not a gateway. It's actual physical storage arrays on your premises that you pay for on the go based on actual consumption, up or down. And do you need both? Do you need a hybrid architecture where some of your data resides at AWS and some of it resides on premises? We cover that too, just as well, with this very same architecture.
No, it's always a pleasure to work with you. You do such a nice job of explaining. Thank you. I want to go back to the blue layer for just a moment. There's so much going on there, and I know we're going to talk maybe in a little bit more detail later, but it's important, I think, to ask you, this layer here, this really, you talked about VMware and Microsoft. We also have in this layer other partners we work with, best of breed partners for certain things like backup. I see we have antivirus mentioned here. I know that's through our partnership with McAfee, for instance. I think it's good for people to know that you know, we're part of an ecosystem. We work with those companies that we think offer valuable and top quality services that are complementary to what we're doing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned McAfee on antivirus. We can mention Commvault, Veeam, Asigra on backup. We look for those partners that have the most to offer to our customers, and we work directly with them to create an even more powerful value proposition that each company alone can provide.
Yep. I know that people may have questions about what goes on now inside of our system. And so to dive a little bit deeper, let's take a look at exactly how Zadara's storage environment works. We like to say that it offers multi-tenant efficiency with a single tenant experience. As Noam was talking about earlier with regard to the noisy neighbor problem, we set out to solve that problem and others related to enterprise storage being delivered in a cloud environment or experience. And we achieve that with our patented storage array, virtual private storage array technology. You can see here an illustration of two different users with two different storage arrays running on what appears to be a common system, but in fact they have total isolation. So Noam, please help us understand how user number one and his or her needs can be satisfied without impacting user number two and his or her needs.
Gladly. And so this diagram, this graphic, is a distillation of many years of research and development and many patents. And I think it does a great job of showing what is different and what is so powerful about this architecture. What you're looking at is an example of a Zadara storage cloud. It's a set of physical infrastructure that runs our patented software. If you look vertically, each column is what we call a storage node. It's a server, and it has compute, it has memory, and it has directly attached drives, which are shown below the top. So the top shows the compute and memory, and then there are drives directly attached below it. And so in this example, we show a 6-node cloud, and these clouds are expandable to a great extent. They could be 100 petabytes large, and they can be expanded on demand non-disruptively. That cloud, as Greg mentioned, has two users. So let's start with the first user, who's the green user. That green user has requested 4 drives, and he asked that those drives be managed by what we call a 200 series engine. That's our smallest engine. And think of an engine as a controller, and it's a software entity. It's a virtual controller, and it always runs on 2 different nodes for reasons of high availability. So what happens when this user comes in real time and orders these resources through what we call the provisioning portal? In real time, we assign 4 different drives to this user per the user's request, and we launch 2 virtual controllers on 2 separate nodes. In this case, it's on the first node, which is the leftmost, and then the third node, the third from the left. To really show you how the multi-tenancy works, let's now go to the second user, the blue user. The blue user comes along again through the provisioning portal and requests what we call a 400 series engine. That's the second smallest engine, and it's double the size of the 200 engine, so it provides double the performance. And as you can see, it takes up 2 cores on 2 nodes each. There are 2 cores on the first node and 2 more cores on the fourth node in this case. And then the user requested 10 drives, and we therefore assigned these 10 drives to the user. So what you can see now by looking at the picture as a whole is the green user and the blue user share absolutely nothing. They don't share drives, they don't share memory, they don't share CPU cores, and not seen here, but I will add that they also live in completely separate network worlds. They each have a virtual LAN assigned to them, so they can not reach each other. They can even use the same IP addresses and not step on each other because they each have their own VLAN. And that VLAN is connected to their VPC at AWS. And only to their VPC at AWS. So the only way that this storage can be accessed is from inside their VPC at AWS, therefore maintaining the security paradigm of AWS.
Nice. This is a lot to unpack. It's a lot to digest, I imagine, for any new user, any visitor to this webinar. But I think you can see from Noam's description that what we're talking about is a combination of our proprietary software and standard hardware from names that you know and you trust. This is what makes Zadara so powerful, is that we actually put together the physical systems, and those physical systems are designed to run in an optimized manner with our software. And then we place those systems, as Noam alluded to earlier, whether it's on your premises or in the cloud, we place those systems and then we manage them. So this is not a software scheme, although it involves software. It's not an appliance, although it involves hardware. This is a service, and it is the result of tremendous research into how to make all of this work in a cloud environment. Thanks, Noam. Let's keep going. I know that we have slides to get through and we are burning time here. So let's keep moving. We want to make sure everybody gets a chance to hear and see the full story. So let's take a moment just to review what it is very briefly that you can expect to get from a system like ours. At Zadara, we have thought about this for some time, and we've put together what we think is a pretty thorough list of capabilities. And again, of course, we manage all of this, but the capabilities here are not surprising to anybody who runs storage for a living. These are the kinds of capabilities you would expect to get at any storage system that you're running yourself on your own premises or in your data center. And now, of course, you can get them anywhere. Let's go through some of these, a few of these anyway, in a little bit more detail because they're real highlights for the purposes of this presentation. Noam, this is one that we talked about earlier about cloud-based NFS, CIFS, Active Directory in a single service. Want to make sure people understand the import of single service. Talk to us just for a moment here about the implications of that.
What it is both convenience and future proofing. It's a single service that provides all the file protocols needed by today's applications. And I call it future proof because it's possible, for example, to have a scenario where there's a data set being accessed by an application, let's say it's on a Linux environment and uses NFS, and then it later becomes necessary to expose the same data to a Windows-based application for one reason or another. Having a single service that supports NFS and CIFS with Active Directory integration means that it is easy to add that Windows environment into the same environment without the need to copy the data or replicate it or manage a separate environment. It's simply a question of exposing the same volume that's already exposed as NFS, also with a CIFS protocol, and then the Windows application is able to access the same data. It's convenient, it's quick, and it keeps all of the options open. It looks like, Greg, we have a poll about the top 3 cloud storage use cases.
Oh, we sure do, Noam. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. And the poll, I appreciate you chiming in, Noam. I put it on mute. I wanted to make sure I'm not stepping on you while you're talking. The poll here should be pretty straightforward. In fact, we have lots of votes coming in. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to close this in a moment, and we will display the results. I can tell you that we have a clear winner coming in, and here we go. Let's take a peek. It looks like backup and DR, probably no surprise to anybody who's been paying attention to the cloud and the storage use cases that are talked about most in the media. Backup and DR is our clear winner. 100% of our of our attendees voted for it. And then we have archiving, which could be considered a flavor of that, but it's different, we all know. And high availability and other. Unfortunately, we are limited in how many choices we could give you. So we created an other category, everyone. Thank you for those that answered this. Let's go ahead and with those answers in mind, let's take a look at a few more things here. This slide seems like a natural next one, doesn't it? No, so this one covers quite a bit of ground in some ways, but it's a very simple slide to understand. Walk us through how this service for AWS users in particular can be very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's good to see that the backup choice got 100% support from our attendees. That's reassuring, and good news is we're in a really good position to help with that and make it both more robust and easier to use. What we're showing here is that by using the Zadara platform, you have the choice of two different types of data protection, and you can use one, the other, or both of them at the same time. One of them is remote mirroring, so you are able to replicate your data from one Zadara virtual private storage array to any other Zadara virtual private storage array around the world. It could be at another AWS region, it could be connected to another public cloud, or it could be at a private facility on your own premises. In any case, you can replicate from any one to any other, and by doing so, you get a copy, a usable, mountable copy of your data at the other location, which is perfect for disaster recovery. So if something happens to the main site, you can mount the same data at the remote site to a virtual machine, run your application there, and you're off and running with the identical performance, with the identical capabilities. In addition to this, or instead of this, depending on your needs, there's a built-in backup to S3 capability. The backup to S3 capability will take the same snapshots that you create anyway and will ship them to S3 or any S3 compatible object store. And what that means is that you're able to store your snapshots in what could be a very affordable medium, for example, S3 infrequent access, which is rather attractively priced at $1.25 US cents per gigabyte per month, with the very important twist that we add, that you are able to access your data while it's still in S3. So even though we call it backup, we don't require a restore in order for you to get access to your data. You're able to back up to S3 and yet access the data directly from S3 immediately, no matter how much data you have, which should give you a lot of peace of mind in a very affordable solution. And by the way, that means also you could put you're able to easily put your data in two independent storage services in case your risk management policy requires you to do that. So we make that easy, affordable, and very safe for you.
Real flexibility there. It's nice. I want to keep us moving, Noam. I know that we've had some big topics to cover, and we've spent some time on some slides. I want to make sure we get through a few others while respecting everyone's time. So I won't dwell on this, but this is an exciting announcement. We have recently come out with Zadara for VMware Cloud on AWS, and I'm going to launch a quick poll while you talk a little bit about it, Noam. I'm going to ask people about their use of it, if they're using it, and if so, great. If not, do you have plans to use it? Tell us a little bit about what we've done with our partner, VMware.
This is really exciting, and the response to our announcement has been even bigger than we expected. And it's very, very rewarding to see all of the positive feedback. What we did is we made the same great storage service available not only to virtual machines running in EC2 on AWS, but also to virtual machines running on VMware Cloud and AWS. So these are virtual machines running on top of the ESX hypervisor and the SDDC, the software-defined data center environment that is at AWS. And we are able to offer to those VMs the same capabilities. So all the file protocols, as well as block and object storage with very high performance and reliability and all of the features that we talked about here, including remote replication, including backup to S3, yet connected to a VMware environment on demand and with VMware certifications and the various plugins that you would expect from a VMware-centric storage like Site Recovery Manager as one example.
Nice. It's interesting. I've got the poll up right now. For those of you that have not voted, please take a moment. I'm going to share these results. I think the fact that VMware Cloud on AWS is so new means that there's likely not going to be much surprise in the results that we see coming. Let's take a look, shall we? We have nobody on this call using it yet. No surprise. We know that it's brand new. And a little over a quarter planning to use it within a year, and a lot of folks with no plans to use it. Now, we're not going to spend time talking about this topic today. We actually have a webinar about this planned in the next few weeks, and you'll see an announcement about that. If you're interested to join us, we hope you will. But the fact that it's so new, I think people are still digesting this announcement about VMware Cloud and AWS, and so those results are not a huge surprise. Thank you, everyone, for offering your input. I told you that we talk about security a little bit more later in the presentation. Here it is. No, I just want to make sure everybody understands, because this is such an important topic, what it is we do for security with our systems.
You probably heard from us throughout this webinar our emphasis on giving you control. This is really central to what we do. It's part of our philosophy, and therefore it's part of our product. You control where your data resides always. You control where it is. You control where it isn't. If you delete your data, it's actually gone, and it's gone forever. So you're in the driver's seat. We provide the tools. You provide the direction. No difference with security. From the very beginning, we have offered encryption with customer managed keys. We never thought it was appropriate for us to manage the keys, and we designed the system so that when you encrypt your data, you come up with the key, you're responsible for the key, and we don't have access to the key. And the upshot of it is A, you're in control, and B, you have a lot of responsibility to safeguard those keys. In fact, when we prompt you to create the keys in the first place, we warn you, there's a warning screen that states 5 different ways the fact that without the keys, there's no access to the data and there's nothing we can do about it. So we use words like irretrievable to make it as clear as possible that with this great power also comes great responsibility.
Well said. I'm sure any storage admin with experience understands exactly how important that is. You're right. I did promise you earlier that we would take a look at Zadara on the marketplace. You can see here one of our listings. This is for what we call our storage cube in a 60 terabyte size. We in fact have flexible cubes, and Noam, I want you to talk about that in a second, and also talk to us about how being on the AWS marketplace makes it easy for anybody who might be interested in adding Zadara.
The main benefit of purchasing through the AWS marketplace is that you get a single consolidated bill. Instead of getting one bill from AWS for your compute and associated services and one bill from us for storage services, you can have a single bill from AWS that includes everything that you do on EC2 and other AWS services, plus everything that you do with us. So therefore your Zadara VPSAs, the virtual private storage arrays that we mentioned, would show up on your AWS bill. That makes it very easy, and you get the full detail of your usage, and it's very it's put in very plain English terms, so you can understand what you're paying for. That's the main advantage. There's another advantage to going through the marketplace. We have pre-configured VPSAs. So whereas the VPSA that you would procure through our provisioning portal gives you the full set of features, we recognize the need for something closer to a one-click experience. So the cubes that Greg just mentioned, and you can see one here, are pre-configured to provide you the capacity that you need without the need for configuration steps. And in fact, we will even launch a virtual machine and mount a volume of the size that you selected to that virtual machine. So in this example on the screen, if you purchase a 60 terabyte cube, you get the necessary drives, you get the necessary RAID protection, and then you get that 60 terabyte volume mounted as a file share to your virtual machine, and all in a single click.
Ah, a single click. Imagine that. It is nice, isn't it? And that gets to I think, an issue that really is the single biggest differentiator between Zadara and perhaps other methods, other ways of trying to accomplish the same thing. And that's the idea that we are a service. We are 100% pure play enterprise storage as a service. It's all we do. And the 100% uptime guarantee that we offer, that's a serious commitment. And we know we can achieve it because we have people working around the clock and around the world, as a matter of fact, to ensure that we are being proactive in our approach to support and management. This guarantee is not something that we take lightly. We've been operating for now 8 years. Noam, talk to us a little bit about how this works and our track record.
Absolutely, we're very proud of it. So if you live in the real world like us, you know that 100% is not a realistic number, and so we first want to acknowledge that's a reality. So what we're talking about here is two things. One is, what availability are we achieving, and the other is what availability we feel responsible for. So we feel responsible to provide 100% uptime, which means that all downtime is unacceptable, no matter how brief. That's the philosophy. That's in our contract. That means that any incident that suspends access to the data is eligible for SLA credits, service level agreement credits. That's our commitment to you. In terms of what we have provided over 7 years plus of continuous service, is 5.5 nines of availability. That's 99.9995% of actual availability, and that is better than what the leading on-premises storage arrays provide, and we believe also among storage as a service offerings, it is also market leading, and that is a function of what Greg described: both a great product, great technology, highly reliable, and a dedicated team whose only job 24/7 is to keep this system working reliably, smoothly, and with high performance.
Excellent. And this is great that you made the distinction between the guarantee we provide, and it is in our contracts, and the actual performance that we've achieved over many years. And I think that people can see that the promises we've made, we've been able to keep and deliver on those sustainably over many years. You mentioned earlier, Noam, we have multiple regions. I know that we're looking at this map the other day. We added Sao Paulo, South America. So we actually have 16 now on the map. And you can see that here. So we believe that regardless of where you operate and where you are in the world, if you're looking for an AWS region, chances are we've got you covered. Let's talk now. Let's wrap this up a little bit. We're getting to the end, and I'd like us to wrap up in the next minute so that we're respectful of people's time and we have time for Q&A. We have here the last, but certainly perhaps one of the more important, if not the most important part of our discussion, and that is how does all this work? What's it going to cost in order to do this? We have a survey that we undertook, and we examined CapEx versus lease, of course, very traditional methods of procuring storage, versus some of the cloud services, and then we put those against Zadara in a long-term study, and we discovered something very interesting. It wasn't a huge surprise to us, but it is a bit of an eye-opener for many people who are new to us, and that is that even over the long haul, Zadara proves to be the most cost-effective solution. There are a number of reasons for that. Obviously, the startup costs are lower, and that you can see right at the beginning of the chart. But the costs to maintain this remain lower because we have, we handle all of the storage refresh, we handle all of the maintenance of the hardware, and we do in fact replenish it over time, and then of course you're not paying for unused capacity. So Noam, in the real world, give us a sense of how you've seen this play out for actual users.
I mentioned earlier that the architecture, when we talked about that complex slide showing the storage nodes and such, that the user or customer gets to choose their own drives in any mix of hard drives and SSDs, and they get to change that mix over time based on their changing and evolving needs. This is a major source of cost savings because the ability to choose hard drives versus SSDs dynamically based on actual needs means that hot data can sit in SSDs, and when it becomes colder, which most data does over time, it can move over to hard drives, which are still much, much, much cheaper, about 6 times cheaper on a per gigabyte basis than SSDs.
It's a big difference, right? And that kind of flexibility can make a huge difference in your cost. I did launch a poll while you were talking. I realized that this poll involves money. These polls are anonymous, of course. We're just curious about what people are spending on cloud storage. And if you provide these answers, it doesn't mean that you or your company will be associated with a particular answer. But we are looking to gauge where the market is at. There's been a huge shift in dollars to the cloud over the last several years. There's also been a very interesting shift as people have grown more sophisticated in their understanding of the cloud and what it is they're hoping to achieve in a hybrid IT environment. There's been a shift back to on-prem. In many cases, people are getting more savvy about which workloads they want to operate in which environments. But we're curious about the cloud spend and where that's at for people. So if you want to take a moment to provide some information, know that this is simply being gathered in the aggregate, and it's not being gathered on an individual basis, and it helps us understand a little bit more. So thank you. As we gather these, we are going to be wrapping this up and moving into Q&A. So please also take a moment to put your questions into the control panel for GoToWebinar so that we will have a chance to answer them. All right, I'm going to close this poll here in a moment, and we can display those results because that's what we like to do. We want to make sure everybody sees what we learned. And no surprise, the I don't know category got a lot of answers. We understand the other answers here, 10,000 to 50,000 per month, and that's no surprise. We have customers that we see spending many, many times that. We have customers at all sizes, but we see customers spending quite a bit on cloud storage these days. And obviously, when we look at things like the chart that we have here, savings can really add up when you're spending a lot. All right, let's move to Q&A, and while we do that, here you can take a brief moment to see some of the customers that we've served and do serve. Some names that you likely know. These companies have made a commitment to operating in the cloud or in a hybrid IT environment, and we're looking for flexibility in order to do that, and we're very proud to serve them. So thank you very much, everyone. We did promise you we'd save some time for Q&A. We do have some time for that. Noam, I have gathered some questions here in the panel, and we can dive in and take a look at a few of these. And I could, if you don't mind, I'd like to get your help. It says,
Absolutely.
thank you. One person asked, is this an appliance? Is it between AWS Cloud and the enterprise? I think I know exactly what they mean by that, but because we did cover some of this earlier, but talk a little bit about physically where we're situated and all that.
Sure, Greg. I'll start by what it isn't. I think that'll make things clear. It's not a gateway. So if by appliance you mean a gateway, something that sits in the enterprise, doesn't itself have storage, but virtualizes storage that's somewhere remotely in the cloud, that this is not that. What this is, it's a storage cloud. It's a physical storage cloud. In the AWS context, we have pre-positioned this cloud in the 16 regions that Greg mentioned. So we put this infrastructure physically very close to AWS locations, close enough that we can offer latency of between 1 and 2 milliseconds. In other words, a local latency between the virtual machines and the volumes. This is round trip time. So this is like an internal network. And then in addition, we can place these clouds on customers' private premises. If they need private storage or they want storage that's able to replicate to our public cloud locations.
That's a great bit you just brought up at the end, and in fact answers another question I saw pop up. Somebody asked, so you'll really ship me gear? You're really going to ship me physical gear to my premises? And yes, we do. That's exactly right. And then we manage it. We ask you to plug it in, of course, and then we manage it. It's something that we pioneered. It is just a different way to think about consuming storage, and in many ways, a huge change in how you think about your storage infrastructure, even on-prem. We have found amongst our customers that it frees up their staff to go focus on other high-value activities inside the data center, knowing that their storage admin is being covered by Zadara. So even on-prem, or this is an AWS webinar, of course, but do keep in mind, even on-prem. This is a good question as well. No, I'm going to tackle this one. I got this one. Does Zadara partner with Oracle Cloud or Microsoft Azure? Yes, we do. And we are partners with them, as well as Google Cloud Platform. Those partnerships work very much the same way that we've been describing AWS here. And for anybody interested in operating in a multi-cloud environment, probably a good idea to keep us in mind, because we're going to be able to give you flexibility and power that you would not otherwise be able to get as you operate amongst and between those cloud services. Noam, elaborate on that a little bit. I know that you know more about specifically with your work with customers, how the customers benefit from having Zadara, even in a multi-cloud environment where you have multiples.
Yes, and there are two important points here. One is in our survey earlier, the number one concern was vendor lock-in. And the fact that we have our storage in a cloud adjacent location, but not inside these cloud vendors, provides an ability to connect the same data to multiple clouds, either simultaneously, and we have customers who do that. Different clouds have different strengths, and in a multi-cloud environment, one can combine the strengths of the various clouds, and one can avoid vendor lock-in because their data does not live inside any one of those clouds, meaning that they can shift the workload from one cloud to another based on technical advantages, pricing advantages, whatever the need is. And that shift is quick and easy because the data doesn't have to move. It's simply a matter of a network connection from where the storage already is to a new cloud that's in the same region.
Excellent. We have another question here about how we do business. Do you require long-term commitments? No, we don't. We do have options, and we do see that many of our customers start with us with a single workload. They start with us on a flexible basis. We like to say, use Zadara for an hour, for a month, forever. It's totally up to you. There are some advantages to working with us on longer term contracts. And when you go on premises, we do have certain minimum commitments that are not significant, but they're different than operating in the cloud. And for those of you that are interested and would like to learn more, we recommend that you reach out. You can see here on the screen, sales@zadara.com. You can learn a little bit more about the many ways in which you can get Zadara. You can learn more about how it is priced. And in fact, I will give everyone here a recommendation. If you'd like to know more about Zadara configurations and pricing of those configurations and what you get with those, please visit our website. You'll find we have a pricing configurator right online, and you can use that tool to learn a little bit more. You can also learn a little bit more about our various services. You can learn more about how we work with AWS. We have dedicated pages on our website talking about that. And we have information about our platform and technology if you'd like to learn a little bit more about that. So we're wrapping up now, and we hope that everybody has enjoyed learning a little bit more about your storage options if you're an AWS user. And we hope that you'll consider Zadara a powerful and valuable new option as you think about your AWS environment, and in fact, think about your storage environment wherever you may be. So to everyone who has attended, thank you very much. Noam, thank you so much for helping us to explore this topic today. We appreciate your expert input.
Absolutely. Thank you to all the attendees, and thank you, Greg, for guiding us through this.
Okay, everyone. Hope to see you on the next webinar. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.